Hey fans, did you know that Dash is the only digital auction platform built specifically for professional sports teams and their fan bases? It is also your place to score your favorite hockey team's most authentic memorabilia and game day experiences. Dash powers the auctions for your favorite AHL, ECHL, SPHL, NAHL, and USHL hockey clubs, plus many more across sports. Get in on the bidding now by texting DASH to 66866 or visit thesinbin.net and click on the word auctions in the upper right corner to find out the latest hockey auctions. Dash, making sports bidding so much easier in the digital age. This episode of the In the Corners podcast is sponsored by Sporfy, the sports video platform that allows you to instantly capture, replay, and share your favorite game highlights, all without having to film. For more information, visit sporfy.com or download the mobile app from the Google Play Store or the App Store.
Hello and greetings from the autumnal mile-high city of Denver, Colorado. Finally, it's been high 80s, low 90s for way too long, and now we are finally in the 60s. But I digress. Welcome from Denver, Colorado.
And Rosemont, Illinois.
Still in the Midwest, huh, Sean?
Yeah. The Big Ten is headquartered here, and I wanted to personally thank the Big Ten commissioner for allowing me to watch Penn State football this year. So that's what I'm doing here.
Well, there you go. Well, with that said, this is the In the Corners podcast for Monday, September 28th, 2020. And as always, welcome to the Good Ship in the Corners for episode number 89. We're closing in on, there we go. Third time's the charm. We're closing in on the century mark of the In the Corners podcast. It might take us obviously 11 more episodes to get there, but we are closer to that than not. My name is CC Hawkley.
And I'm Sean O'Brien.
Thanks for tuning in with us today. And we've got a lot of AHL news and notes to talk about. We've got affiliation changes and shuffles. We've got arena drama in regards to NHL Seattle, the Kraken. And we've got some player signings that we'll hopefully talk about. We've got some, of course, new head coaches that we're going to touch on. So without further ado, we actually have a guest today, which I'm always down for bringing on new people and new guests and everything. So like I said, without further ado, I'm going to bring on actually one of our own Sinbin staffs. He just started this off season. He's been knocking it out of the park with his articles that he's been producing in regards to, a fan's worth in the hockey business and, the Calder Cup championship team for the Charlotte Checkers. And, just like I said, knocking it out of the park. Today, we're joined by one of the newest AHL writers for the Sinbin. Like I said, hopping on board this offseason to cover the Charlotte Checkers. I failed to mention that, but there you go. Aside from his new status as a credentialed journalist for Charlotte, well, for us covering Charlotte, he's pursuing a MBA in hockey business management from Athabasca University in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and is also a prominent member of the Business of Hockey Institute. Here he is to talk some hockey financials with us and, well, a whole lot more. It is Mr. Joseph Wills. Joseph, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, gentlemen. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And like I said, we're going to hit the ground running, and we're going to talk about your neck of the woods there. There's been some affiliation drama ever since the Vegas Golden Knights purchased the San Antonio Rampage for the purpose of relocating them to Henderson, Nevada, and it left Chicago without an NHL affiliate. So let me kind of cover this real quick. I'll give a rough timeline for the viewers and kind of set the table here for our conversation. So like I said, February 6th, Vegas purchased San Antonio. The Wolves now looking for a new NHL affiliate. April 29th was kind of an eye-opening day because you had the Chicago Sun-Times reporting that the Hurricanes and the Wolves were in the works of reaching an affiliation agreement, which left a lot of Charlotte Checkers fans going, hey, wait a second, that's our NHL affiliate. So the Checkers had to release a statement, and I'll read this real quick. It was a short little statement released on April 29th. While we are aware that the Carolina Hurricanes are nearing an affiliation agreement with the AHL Chicago Wolves, the Hurricanes have had little dialogue with us regarding this matter. Not good. In an era where NHL teams are placing great value on affiliations with closer proximity between the two clubs, we understand the confusion that such a move would cause. We will explore other options for our affiliation and look forward to continuing in the American Hockey League when play resumes.
And you just don't see that. Teams don't release statements saying, like, we were not talked to during this process. We have no idea what's going on. Like, that never happens. That is,
right.
It's very surprising to see something like this.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of, Southern hockey and everything, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up real quick. Quick caveat. Very nice Atlanta Thrashers jersey you have on there, Sean.
Thank you. Being here in Rosemont, Illinois, I saw a lot of Thrashers gear around town. And while I was surprised, when in Rome.
Do as the Thrashers fans in Illinois do.
Exactly.
That's the old classic saying, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. So to tidy it all up, September 10th, after a whole, I don't want to say off season because the NHL got going and everything, but September 10th rolled around and maybe it was a coincidence, maybe not, but Florida and Charlotte made their agreement official. The Panthers and the Checkers hitched wagons. There was a letter from team owner Michael A. Kahn released on the same day. Just to touch on that real quick, I want to read a couple sentences from that. He said, though we had previously hoped to continue our affiliation with the Hurricanes, we are very excited to begin working with Florida. The Panthers are dedicated to developing players at the AHL level, and we are confident that this agreement will lead to the success for both organizations when we are able to resume play. Kind of sounded a little similar from the last one, at least at the end there. But on the same day, September 10th, Carolina and Chicago announced their partnership. So, worst kept secret in American Hockey League for months on end, Chicago and Carolina hitching their wagons together. And of course, Florida and Charlotte hitching their wagons together. So I'm going to defer and kind of give the floor to Joseph here because Joseph, you're at ground zero. You did an article about this whole just kerfuffle that's happening. And, there was moving, big moving 40-foot shipping containers outside of, Charlotte's arena there, the Bojangles arena. And you took pictures of that. And it's just like, well, the writing's on the wall. And like I said, worst kept secret in the AHL. But I mean, what started all this? What spurred all this? Like I said, you've got the floor, my friend.
Well, one thing that wasn't in my original article, and I'm not going to go down the rumor mill too much, but I have a very credible source who sent me a message about this when it broke and said, yeah, Kahn and Dundon don't have the best relationship. I think I've referenced it as the immovable, the immovable ego meets the immovable owner. So something had to give. I'm not surprised that this happened. And some other things that kind of occurred even 2 seasons ago when Dundon took over the Hurricanes. The end of that season, the Florida Everblades cut their ties with the Panthers, or vice versa, not the Panthers, the Hurricanes, and moved to Nashville to become that affiliate. And then Greenville came in, and we had hockey in the Carolinas, and that lasted 1 season, and here we are. This kind of reminds me of being at a school dance and the slow music begins and everybody finds a dance partner, and here's Florida and Charlotte kind of looking around the dance floor. They're the only two left not dancing, so they obviously had to lock arms and start the dance. Very unfortunate here in Charlotte. A lot of people were obviously confused, upset, add descriptor here. But again, here we are. And what's kind of funny, Alexa Savella, who was traded from the Hurricanes or from Charlotte to the Blackhawks, then to Florida, will actually be back in Charlotte now playing for the Checkers once again. So it's funny how musical cities, right?
Welcome back, Cotter. More like, welcome back, Alexa. So there you go.
That's interesting though, because there was definitely a lot of rumor kind of behind the scenes that for whatever reason the Charlotte Carolina marriage was not not the happiest. I mean, I heard a lot of very, wild speculation rumors myself, but I was very surprised just because it seems so counterintuitive that like so many NHL parent clubs are saying that like one of the best moves we ever made was putting our AHL affiliate, right down the road from us. I think that's practically a direct quote that the Avs head coach had about having the Eagles close by. I know Anaheim and their AHL affiliate has really enjoyed that overlap. I mean, it's not always necessary, though. You see AHL, NHL marriages that aren't, span a pretty big distance. Syracuse and Tampa has been amazing for them. Utica and Vancouver has produced some quality prospects, even though, they could not be farther apart. But it is really confusing, especially because I thought that one Carolina like hockey branding was very good on their part of having basically, Greenville and Charlotte and Carolina all under one, one not ownership, but like affiliation. That made so much sense and seemed to do so well. I just
Yeah, absolutely. And it was all in what we call the 85 corridor that runs through Greenville, through Charlotte, and then hooks up on I-40 to get to Raleigh area. But and the Greenville affiliation was only for 1 year, so it hasn't been announced yet what's going to happen between Greenville and Carolina either. Are they going to move to Florida so that they can bring their guys back and forth between Charlotte and Greenville? And those are still some uncertain terms.
For sure.
Now, Joseph, I obviously touted your business acumen before officially inviting you onto the program. So, I definitely want to see like a business related side to this. Like Sean mentioned, you have solid long distance relationships between like a Utica and a Vancouver and a Syracuse and a Tampa Bay. And obviously Charlotte, they're not going to have to travel too much farther because Florida is, still there down in the, in the southeast portion of the United States. And, with modern air travel and everything like that, I know that COVID is just kind of the lingering, over encompassing topic that we have going on in this day and age. But, to kind of set that aside for a second and to talk more about the financial side of things. I mean, why, aside from the bad blood that you kind of touched on, why, in a business sense, could a Charlotte and Florida and even a Chicago and Carolina work out in like a financial sense?
Well, I mean, definitely not ideal. Actually, we just kind of drove near Greenville back to Charlotte yesterday for something, and it took, let's just say 3 gallons of gas. So you're looking at, $7-8 of fuel versus a $300 plane ticket. Which I think is why Vegas made the move they did. Nicholas Waugh, who plays for Vegas and whose jersey I have on today, he made 22 different AHL, NHL changes just because of the salary cap. So you add plane tickets to that, hotel, whatever the case, that definitely adds up. So having them an hour away now will be much easier there in Henderson. So I really think that, the business side of it was just kind of ignored. I think it was more pride than it was business sense, unfortunately.
And I mean, we've seen that Tom Dundon is not unwilling to, make some, in hindsight, business decisions where you're like, okay, I mean, American Alliance of Football and all, but
right. Understood. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all, especially like I said, from a business aspect. The whole point is to make money, and it's very rare that an AHL club actually does make money. I've heard from many sources that Con loses about $1 million per season. Obviously, don't quote me on that because that's all conjecture. However, this is going to put him in the hole even more with all the travel costs and whatnot, getting his players back and forth.
Not to mention, it's not like the Florida Panthers are just swimming in spare cash. They're not a team that has had the benefits of a downtown Miami arena or, success and a, diehard fan base, which, I mean, those are all things that hurt the franchise, especially now that you like. It's an improvement for Florida to not have to send your prospects back and forth from Springfield. Yeah, you're somewhat closer, but like I'm still surprised too that you don't see more relocation of AHL teams towards the southern, like the southeast, given that there are more NHL teams there. I remember when I did the like massive AHL, ECHL, NHL fantasy realignment. Like I was struggling with a lot of those like Florida Panthers, Tampa Bay Lightning, Nashville Predators teams because it's like the only AHL team in the region is Charlotte.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they have to travel to play even, say, Providence. I mean, their closest rival, I believe, would be Lehigh Valley by mileage comparison, or Wilkes-Barre. You know, that's a good 7-8 hour bus ride, and that's their closest opponent. So it's definitely not cheap, at least, you know, traveling the season, and then account, you know, call-ups and sending them down. It can definitely get pricey.
For sure. And especially too, it's not even just the price of calling up your prospects, but, you know, sending your development staff guys there, your player development guys, your skills coaches that are going up and down. Like, I mean, you don't want them to be on the ice with your guys every single day because it's just too many people to, you know, manage with one player. But like, you want to be having them get in front of them for once a week, twice a week, you know, here and there. And now you're having to send them back and forth a bunch. Like that was one of the major complaints that Anaheim had when they pulled stuff to San Diego. It's like, we don't have to go across the country anymore to Cincinnati or.
Right. And, you know, again, in that kind of business sense, I mean, that was brilliant what Dave Andrews was able to do with moving all of those teams to California, you know, but then you kind of have the backlash, you know, look at, was it Manchester that won the Calder Cup in 2015, and then in 2019 they're shutting the doors because the fans, you know, and I talked to Kevin Westgarth about this at the draft last year, and he said, yeah, the fans are used to a level of talent, and once they went down to an ECHL level, the fans stopped showing up because they kind of, I don't want to say spoiled, but you get used to a level of play, and when it's not there, you kind of lose interest.
Yeah, and I mean, especially too for what is a much more, and I hate using this term, but traditional hockey market. It's you know, a market there that has winter and hockey rinks and youth hockey ad nauseum. So like, I can definitely see that being a difference that matters. But I mean, I guess one of the questions I have for you too, in the business sense, is do you think that Bill Zito and the new Florida Panthers GM and the Charlotte Checkers really had any rough negotiations here? Because both of them realized, like, it's us or nothing. So that to me seems like a great time to dig in and be like, well, we're going to want some stuff here because we know you don't have a choice.
Right. Well, what's interesting is in the release, and I've seen this in a couple of places, that Carolina and Chicago signed what they called a 3-year deal. And between Florida and Charlotte, they just left it as multi-year deal. So it was still kind of ambiguous in that sense as well. So again, I'll kind of use that high school dance or that school dance analogy. They looked around and those were the only two not dancing, so they really didn't have much of a choice. And, you know, like Charlotte had said, well, they had no idea that they were losing their affiliation. Well, you didn't hear, you know, Florida say that about Springfield or vice versa. So it was Charlotte, I think, that was really the only one trying to raise that flag per se.
Well, and I think, you know, bringing up Springfield, you know, I went and looked back. I'm like, when did Springfield and St. Louis reach their 5-year affiliation agreement? And it was way back on March 6th. So you want to talk about the slow dancing music starting. It's like, boom, that music started, you know, February when, you know, Vegas was like, okay, we're buying San Antonio. We're going to be moving them to Henderson. And so that left the St. Louis Blues without an AHL affiliate. And then Springfield's all like, hey, we can do that. And so since their agreement was up with Florida, it was just like, boom, both of them got on the dance floor and they're like, hands on hips, hands on shoulders. They're dancing to Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith. So there you go.
Exactly. And, you know, if we can kind of touch on the San Antonio thing a little bit too, I mean,
Sure.
That was kind of a surprise that they just up and sold. And just looking it up, I guess the Rampage were owned by the Spurs Sports Entertainment, and they played there at the AT&T Center, but they were pulling in 6,100, an average of 6,100 in ticket sales. So I don't know, and obviously that's not even close to, I think the lowest in the league is about 25 to 3,500.
Yeah, I think Binghamton.
Average in sales. Binghamton, Stockton, I think it was the lowest for this last season at, at 25 or 3,500. I can't remember which. And so I don't think they were going broke, though, their affiliation would have been with St. Louis. So, the flights would have been that bad from Texas to Missouri. But anyway, I don't know. I just thought that was very strange, and I can't really find an article showing something definitive as to why the Rampage or why the Spurs sold them.
My only theory to that whole thing is that they were iffy on keeping in the hockey business, even if they were turning profits and stuff. I imagine it probably wasn't an easy, business to be a part of when they had the Spurs, and was probably in some, because the Spurs are clearly their main business. That's their bread and butter, and the Rampage were just a thing they did on the side. And I imagine at some points that became a headache, and while they were making money from it or breaking even-ish in all likelihood, it was probably not the easiest for them, especially trying to manage them around the Spurs. And I imagine Vegas did a very Godfather thing of they made them an offer they couldn't refuse. And even though they weren't looking to sell, they were like, you know what? This is much more of a headache than it's worth for us because it makes doing our Spurs thing more challenging. Let's pull the trigger here and see if we can get a good price. So, I mean, I'm wildly speculating here. I have no sources. I'm a random guy in Illinois. So, but that does make sense from a perspective of that definitely could be what happened.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, looking into the proverbial crystal ball, and then, a month later, this whole COVID thing happened. So it was really good timing on this first part, of course.
Yeah. Well, and I wrote an article. It was actually, I finished it up during the Super Bowl, oddly enough, just watching the Super Bowl, working on the article, but I kind of detailed all of the independently owned teams and kind of was like, well, all these teams are doing well financially. Here's the major front runners to be purchased by Vegas to be relocated to Henderson. And I kind of put it out there. It's like, first and foremost, not the Chicago Wolves, because they've been independent for 25 plus years, and they like being independent. They like being independently run, and it's been working out for them on the ice and off the ice. But Rockford, I thought, was a curious thing, and I wanted to get your take on this, Joseph, because you're here and you're a business-minded dude. So I wanted to just throw you this. But my main pick back in March or February was the Rockford IceHogs to be purchased because they are owned by the city of Rockford, Illinois. And I was just like, that is really bizarre for a minor league hockey club. I think it's the only instance in minor league hockey where they're just owned by a city.
Right. And I mean, very, very good point. Because, you're right. That doesn't happen very often, if anything. I mean, you see, cities will own the sports venue. Obviously, they want that's how they get their revenue. I mean, okay, so, Rosemont, they love their hockey. I mean, the entire region of Chicago just loves their hockey. And I think they do have, that really good following. They do a lot of events, for, different charities, organizations, holidays, stuff like that. I just think it's really, really well run. And again, it's even more kind of not head scratching, but it's even more impressive when it's run by the city.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sean, did you have any other questions for Joseph in regards to this topic before we move on?
No, I think we covered it pretty well. One more thing. Do you anticipate there being Chicago is going to keep the same uniforms, which they should because they're classics. But Charlotte very much did the kind of standard AHL, NHL thing where it's like, we're just going to take your general jersey outline and then slap our logo on the front. Now that team has changed, do you see drastic changes coming for the Charlotte Checkers uniforms, or what is your feel on that?
Right. Actually, Tony Khan had put out a statement that same day about the affiliation and said, no, we're not changing a thing. we're Charlotte. This is who we are. This is what we have, and we're sticking with it. Now, again, that was in the statement. Things happen. Who knows, what will happen when the season starts, but I haven't seen, any indication of a color change or anything like that. My guess is instead of a hurricane, it's just going to be a panther on the shoulder.
Yeah. I'm just surprised simply because I would have thought they would have gone to like at least a different shade of red and then keep everything else the same, just so it's not, shades of ex-girlfriends all over you.
Well, absolutely. And you could have even worked in that blue somewhere, but hey, when you have the money to own the franchise, I guess you can do with it what you want.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a good looking uniform. So I could definitely see, holding steady there, but we'll see what happens.
Right.
Well,
exactly.
And you don't want an Atlanta Gladiator situation where you're preparing for a potential affiliation with Nashville and you change your jerseys to potentially, reflect that. And then you're just like, wait, why did you change your jerseys to baby blue and yellow?
Toledo had the greatest response of like, bro, what's up? Those are our colors that you really copied our team.
Yeah, and they tried to put a spin on it, oddly enough, because you've got your Thrashers jersey on. They're like, oh, but we're embracing the past. We're embracing the color schemes of the past. And it's like, no, you wanted a relationship with Nashville, and you didn't quite get it because Florida beat you to the punch. So, but anyway, all cringing aside, I digress. We're going to move on to the next topic. So you mentioned arena deals in cities like that. Let's talk about the AHL club that's coming into Palm Springs. Boy, I've been keeping a close eye on this, my finger to the pulse of what's going on there in the Palm Springs area. You had the Agua Caliente band of Cahuilla Indians. I may have pronounced that wrong, but I went for it. You had an agreement between the Seattle Kraken organization, the Oakview Group, rather, and they were going to build a arena on a 16-acre plot in downtown Palm Springs, but the land was owned by, the Indian tribe that I just mentioned. And so you were supposed to have a groundbreaking ceremony in February 2020. Didn't happen. Then you get on a little further into the summer, and there's concerns about, of course, COVID-19 just hitting California really hard. And the construction industry obviously kind of had a ripple effect there in that regard. And then you, of course, had parking concerns. Where are people going to park? Public safety was another thing that was brought up. And so, you've got this AHL club that's slated for a debut in 2021-22, and the ground hasn't even been broken in downtown Palm Springs. So they announced, last week, I believe. Let me see here. Last week, yes, last Wednesday, the Oakview Group said, okay, we're calling an audible. We're going to go about 15 miles southeast, rather. Is a little bit north of the town of Palm Desert. Yes. And so you go from a 16-acre plot to a 43-acre plot for the building of a new 10,000-seat arena. It's still going to be 300,000 square feet. And then you've also got room for expansion. You got a training facility plan, but you've also got, community gathering spaces. And you've also got the opportunity to build rinks for, public skates and, ice hockey leagues, beer leagues and things like that. So you've got these, public spaces as well. And it's going to be just south of a golf course that they've got going on there. So they're just developing this whole plot of land and everything. And it's off of Interstate 10 there in the Southern California area. I've got an article that I'll link to once we get all this done. But man, I mean, Joseph, again, I'm gonna throw it at you because you're the businessman here. But I mean, to call an audible after no construction of about 6-7 months, and to move, just to pick up operations and to move it, just across the way, it just seems like just a huge undertaking. It's obviously salvaging. The AHL club is going to bump out their season to 2022-23, so the Kraken will have to figure out where their prospects are going to play the year before that. But I mean, just that much of a monumental undertaking to build a new arena and then to kind of switch land and property and everything. It's just like, it just seems like a huge, just colossal headache, but they seem to have navigated it well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Unfortunately, the groundbreaking hadn't begun. They weren't halfway into making the arena before all of this happened. So, silver linings, I guess. But that just hearing you, talking about it and your description, it sounds like perhaps maybe the city wasn't in talks when, the tribe and Oakview were having their negotiations or discussions. Now that they're talking about the public safety and the traffic and the parking and all of that. It definitely sounds like, there were some things behind the scenes that, again, maybe the city council and planners, organizers weren't aware of. And I just had another thought that just escaped me, of course. But yeah, at least, again, the ground hadn't broken yet. So that's a plus.
Yeah. I think the most impressive thing on the entire story, too, is like we're talking about a small city council and a movie producing studio that's the biggest backer for the Oakview group and the Indian tribe, and there was nothing. This was like the most dead story ever. It was just like, yeah, that groundbreaking thing didn't happen. What's going on? Mom. The word is mom. Like, there wasn't a hint of leaks or rumor. Like, it was just, we have no idea. No one is telling us anything. And it was like that for months until an alternative was proposed. So, like, props to everyone involved for the airtightness of, making sure you control the narrative here, because they did a great job of that. Because, I mean, could you imagine Seattle isn't even a franchise yet, and they already screwed up like how much months of that could have done badly for their PR? Like, that's good work by them.
Well, talk about having an airtight lid. How long did we wait until we found out the Seattle franchise name? So, I think they've had some practice at that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I feel like we all pretty much knew it was down between, Sockeyes, Sasquatch, and Kraken. But yeah, they definitely kept us in suspense until about the day before when they released the teaser video, and it's like, so now it's almost assuredly Kraken. But
right, and then I just remember the other point that I was going to make. It seems like once the COVID started, I think I read something from might have been like Sun Valley or the Sun Times or whatever it was.com. That the tribe just kind of got scared with the COVID thing, because now, hey, build an arena, open it up. Where's your gate revenue? Where's the revenue coming from? These AHL teams don't get TV money. I can't imagine AHL TV has that many subscribers to where they're shelling out millions to the different teams. So, maybe they just, saw the writing on the wall and said, no, we're not putting this up front money yet.
Yeah. What was I going to say too? I had something. I lost it. All right. Cece, anything more that you want to?
I was going to say, I'll jump in while you're thinking about that, Sean. So I do have a quote here from the Oakview Group CEO, Tim Lewicki. After more than a year of good faith negotiations, we were unable to finalize an agreement with the Agua Caliente tribal leaders for OVG to lease, develop, and operate the privately funded arena. We appreciate the ongoing support and encouragement from the community and are very pleased to be partnering with the Burger Foundation, who share our vision for creating a world-class venue for the Coachella Valley and what will be one of the most premier music and professional sports arenas in the world. And, just to kind of wrap it up nicely and neatly here, it is more centrally located. I mean, downtown Palm Springs, again, it could have been a logistical nightmare, and it's understandable that the city council had concerns for public safety and parking and things like that. So you have a more central location just north of Palm Desert here. And, Coachella Valley, they've got like 9 major cities there. They've got Cathedral City, Coachella, Desert Hot Springs, Indian Wells, I put Indian Wells twice there. Palm Springs, Palm Desert, and Rancho Mirage. I get a little repetitive sometimes, but you've got a more central location as well. So this is definitely a silver linings, like Joseph mentioned, a silver lining scenario, and just a more of a blessing, because you've got 43 acres to work with instead of the 16-acre plot that's a little bit constrained by the boundaries of downtown Palm Springs. So all in all, I think Seattle just, they'll have to delay their AHL squad and figure out where their prospects are going to go for a year. And one of the ideas I even heard was, hey, play out of Climate Pledge Arena for a year and just have both of them, both the teams, just kind of pull a San Jose. Sean, you're not a big fan of that?
I mean, yeah, they could, because it's only a year, I suppose they could make that work. But like, my thought was they're renovating that building to house exactly one team, Seattle Kraken. Like, trying to basically shove in another one where they weren't planned for or anything like that. Like, I could see that getting real not friendly. Like,
Right, or they could do what San Antonio did a couple of years ago. They had St. Louis and Colorado as an affiliate, so you have that co-affiliation team. Again, logistical nightmare, but it obviously worked for that short term that they needed it before Colorado came up from the ECHL. So there's 6 California teams that they could pick from, at least 5 that I can name right off the top of my head. But anyway, there's plenty of options if that were to come to fruition.
I also remember what I was going to say too to wrap it up here.
Sure.
So one of the things I saw when I saw they were moving out from downtown is like, yeah, they had logistical concerns about parking and all that stuff, but like having a downtown arena is incredibly important for gate revenue. I mean, look at the problems that even the Ottawa Senators have. They're the capital of Canada, and because the Bell Tire Arena is 35 minutes outside of Ottawa in just a terrible location, like they couldn't sell out a conference final game, a fact they will never live down. The arena for the Florida Panthers is in Sunrise and not downtown Miami. Like, this franchise's entire fate is probably different if they have, an arena on South Beach instead of in, I don't even know where Sunrise is. I'm assuming it's somewhere near Miami, but it's, I think, like 25 minutes away. Like, that's a big difference. But here it doesn't seem like they really took that big of an L. Like, yeah, parking would have probably been a problem, but the team doesn't care about that. They care that people show up to the game. And now that's not so much not a concern. They're not moving 45 minutes away from the nearest city into, I mean, when you said Palm Desert, I'm just expecting actual desert, but like the idea that it's there are populated areas right around there, that it's centrally located. Like, I don't want to say this sounds like a better outcome for them, but
well, it absolutely is, especially with Live Nation getting on board now. They're going to keep that arena filled when there's not hockey in there. So you want to talk about revenue for who's building this thing. I think that was a really, really smart play to go with Coachella and have Live Nation come in, because again, you want it multi-purpose. I mean, but Bojangles here, it's a really, really, I'll call it vintage for a lack of a better term. But they try to have as many events as they can because it only seats about 8,000 anyway. So yeah, having Live Nation, I think, was a really, really smart move on their part.
Yeah, I think definitely to brand to where, you're not just focusing on sports, but you also want to make it a major music venue in Southern California as well. I mean, obviously, anybody that has an inkling of the music industry, it's like, boom, Coachella, that's a big festival. Obviously, it's more of an outdoor festival and everything like that. But when you hear the word Coachella, you think music. At least I do. I'm kind of more of a musically minded person, but you think you hear Coachella, you think the big festival, you think music. So to garner some big acts that could play in a 10,000 seat arena and fill that puppy up, and not necessarily an 18 or a 19,000 seat arena, kind of a la the Pepsi Center. We'll go with the local. We'll go with the local or PNC Arena. We'll go with that too. But it's definitely something to be said, like you said, for Live Nation to jump on board. Yeah, and for like Sean said, they're not taking the L. It's not something to where it's an Ottawa situation where, yeah, you're way the hell out in Bermetton Flats or wherever the Ottawa Senators arena is at, way far away from downtown Ottawa. It's like there is a fine line between, okay, let's build it in the suburbs, kind of like we'll say like Levi's Stadium, Santa Clara, for the San Francisco 49ers. It literally, I've been to that stadium. There is like just tech little business lots that you park in. Like, it's just boom, this big ass arena just right in the middle of a bunch of businesses, like little tech complexes and things like that. So, but it works, and they're drawing gate and everything like that, and they're hosting big events like WrestleMania a few years ago, and they had a exhibition match with FC Barcelona and everything like that. Anyway, I digress. It's good that Seattle figured it out, and that they only have to delay a year instead of having to partner with somebody for 2 or more years. So anyway, I rambled a little bit there, guys. Thanks for hanging with me. So moving on to the next topic of, well, point of interest rather. We've got another head coaching vacancy that was filled since our last episode in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. Obviously, Mike Vellucci taking the assistant coaching position with the Pittsburgh Penguins, getting that promotion, moving on up. And of course, the Penguins, the Baby Pens rather, they're like, okay, well, we need a head coach. And Sean, gotta say, you nailed this one. Cha-ching. Nailed it. So John, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, when I was trying to, get candidates together, what they would be looking for, and trying to get a feel for who the Penguins were going to hire for this. Classic minor hockey move. The longtime assistant coach gets promoted when the head coach gets promoted, and especially one who predated Mike Vellucci being there. It seemed like a very natural fit because they were looking more for a continuity than a complete shakeup. I think if they would have fired Mike Sullivan and just did a Buffalo Sabres bloodletting, we wouldn't be talking about JD Forrest here. But I think that the continuity of coaching is definitely something that was not shocking. It's a classic minor league hockey move. Now, do I know if they interviewed anyone else? I don't, and I don't think they said any either. But it wouldn't shock me. Which, again, interviewing one person for the job is bad. But here we are. The Penguins, I wasn't expecting to take a developmental heavy, approach to it, hiring a juniors coach or something like that. Because they don't really have the young prospect pipeline you would think would come for those coaches. Pierre-Olivier Joseph is the only real guy that they have as a solid prospect right now, as Poulin and Laguerre have one more season in the queue. They're not going anywhere. They might make the Penguins out of camp in 2 years. We'll see. So having someone who's been there with the team, that's worked with them, who is someone they trust, it seemed like a pretty easy one.
Yeah, and obviously, Joseph, you're familiar with Vellucci down there in Charlotte, and an unprecedented move with him, winning the Calder Cup and then taking the head coaching job in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. It was kind of another head scratcher scenario in Charlotte. Just to kind of backtrack a little bit, to talk about Vellucci and not to downplay JD Forrest, getting the head coaching vacancy. Congrats to him. But, with Vellucci moving on from Charlotte to Wilkes-Barre and then getting the promotion, do you think that maybe he was a little handcuffed in Charlotte there, and that he didn't have the opportunity to take an assistant coaching job with the Hurricanes?
Yeah, I believe so. I'll throw it out this way. Vellucci and Brind'Amour probably wouldn't get along, just the different styles of personality.
Gotcha.
From seeing them both, I don't see how that could have played out. But what's really interesting is, and I'm guessing this is kind of the same with a lot of AHL coaches, is Vellucci was the assistant general manager of the Hurricanes. He was the head coach of the Checkers, of course, and then he was the director of player development for Carolina as well, which comes part and parcel, I guess, with being the AHL coach. I won't be surprised if Vellucci replaces Rutherford when Rutherford finally retires. I could see him on that track, or moving up, if Sullivan is let go or moves on to, greener pastures, if you will. I was very happy to see Vellucci get the assistant job, someone giving him a chance.
I think Vellucci as a GM would be a very interesting move. That's I don't want to say that's without precedent in the NHL, but certainly in the last 20 years, that's not a track you see it. But I think that would be interesting, especially, I don't think Jim Rutherford is anywhere near retirement, despite the fact he maybe should be, because he still seems, he's definitely active in the trade market, and he doesn't lame duck that team at all, which that's another topic for another day. But I definitely think that would be interesting to see that path for him, though. I would definitely make news, that's for sure. And there's a lot that goes into being a GM from an assistant GM and that kind of thing. But it's definitely possible. I could see that working.
Right, and I will say, in the back of my head, I was kind of surprised, or back in my mind, that Vellucci didn't try to get Murkowski to come over to Wilkes-Barre. That would have made some waves, I think. Because Murkowski was, of course, the assistant last season when they won the Calder, 2 seasons ago now, I guess. But yeah, that would have definitely made some waves, because I know they have a really good relationship. Matter of fact, David Murkowski was playing with Wilkes-Barre under Vellucci before he got traded to, I guess it was Buffalo.
Toronto.
Gotcha. It might have been Toronto, but I know where that Ryan's brother David was under Vellucci there in Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine probably some of it had to do with the Warsawski knowing he's the first in line for the head coaching gig now that Vellucci moved on, and
Right. Yeah, he was the head coach last year for Charlotte, and they had a really, really rocky start, but I think they started to find their own. Maybe like December, January, and then of course they were getting hot in February, and then COVID happened in March. So who knows how far they would have went. So now he has a Chicago address instead of a Charlotte address. Ryan does.
Anyways, to wrap up here, good luck to JD Forrest. I don't have a high level of expectation for the Baby Pens this upcoming season, but there's still so much work to be done reconstructing the rosters. But we do have to talk about some rosters that are being constructed in the off time here. Couple of signings of note, some players of record going places or staying in places. First one up that I wanted to bring up is one of my favorite players that I have watched for way more years than I realized the other day is Daniel Sprong sticking out in Hershey. I have been watching tape of Daniel Sprong since he was in juniors in Charlottesville, the Charlottesville Islanders in the QMJHL. I was happy to see him stick around in Hershey. Obviously, Hershey is my unofficial team of the AHL, but he still got an NHL shot. He skates really well. His off-puck game is definitely can be maddening for coaches, as he definitely will float and jump out of the zone a little early before is necessary. He takes some kind of laziness with it, but I mean, if you can rip goals, you will always have a place on a hockey team in the AHL or the NHL. I would like to see him get called up to Washington, just because I still think there is an NHL role for him to play. He's a great skater, can shoot. Those are things that NHL teams need. But I wouldn't bet on it, just given how Washington is still pretty stacked at forward and doesn't really need a player of his utility at the spots that he would be fit slotting into. So I would imagine him to stay in Hershey most of the year. But I hope he does get called up. I hope something happens that he gets to make a move to the NHL. I've enjoyed watching him score goals over the years, so that would always be fun.
Well, and the thing with Sprong, just to bring up, in 17-18 with Wilkes-Barre Scranton, he was a point per game player. So, you have a guy like that, the Washington Capitals organization, they traded for Sprong. Let me see exactly which date that they did that. So they traded for Sprong in 1920, and they parted with their longtime defender, Christian Juice. But, they brought him in, and yeah, like you said, he's a cusp AHL top tier, lower level NHL player, and he's got that opportunity. Depending on the depth of forwards in Washington, he's got that opportunity with the re-signing there, with the Hershey Bears organization. But barring any injuries to Sprong himself, I mean, he could definitely be cracking an NHL roster. Obviously, there'd have to maybe be some injuries or trades that occurred for the Capitals, but yeah, it's definitely not too outlandish to say that he could be playing for the Capitals if and when the 2021 season comes to fruition. So,
if and when is definitely a question.
Yes, yeah. So, but you want to talk about more player signings? What about Ob Kubel in Philadelphia? I mean, in Lehigh Valley.
Yeah, I mean, most recently in Philadelphia, he definitely looked very good for them in the bubble, but and I saw a lot of very effusive and sometimes overly so praise for him on Twitter from the Flyers and Phantoms community. In some cases, which I thought was justified, he did look very good, but in others, which I think went a little too far over the top. I remember seeing one tweet in particular that he cleared waivers, I think it was last season, and no other NHL team wanted to take him. They're like, I bet you they're all shooting themselves now. And I'm like, let's maybe slow that just a bit. Like, at the time, he was not doing well. And we've seen him back in a very crazy year in like 10 games. Let's maybe slow our roll here a little bit before saying all the other NHL GMs made a mistake by not, claiming him off waivers. Like, I think he's a good player. I question whether or not he's a full-time NHLer. He does everything well, skates well, shoots well. He's above average in his own end, but he lacks some of those high-end skills that you stack together to really separate himself from the pack. Like, I think he's made strides for sure, and his performance in the bubble definitely shows that he's maybe turned a corner and grown, and he's going to be the player that he's always had the ceiling to be. But I'm not letting a handful of bubble games overrule 3 seasons of scouting reports and AHL tape. I'm rooting for him. He is definitely my style of player, the do-it-all. But I am not ready to, write the check yet if I'm, saying he's 100% Flyers out of camp, second liner, third liner for them. Like, I could very much see him being in Lehigh Valley most of next year. I think that would be unfortunate, but it's very much in the realm of possibility.
Did you ever get a chance to see him play against the Checkers, Joseph?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to see him, and while we're talking the Lehigh Valley, I saw Alex Lyon at least got a 1-year extension as well, so I was glad to see that. I was there for the 5 overtime game. So I'm very familiar with Alex Lyon, and got to meet him once while he was here in Charlotte. Really good guy.
Very nice. Yeah. That was another signing that I have to go down. Did we touch on that? No. Well, yeah. We're actually that's going to be our last one.
Oh, sorry. I just jumped.
Well, we'll jump now because it does make sense. They're both Lehigh Valley. Leon is someone too that's just like, he is the most consistent, marginally above average performing goalie. Like, he never gets that thought where it's like, well, they might send him to Reading because he's screwing it up, but he's never in the conversation for end season awards. Like, he is just that steady 9-16, 9-18, gonna win you some games. That 5 overtime game, he clearly held them in. Like, but he is not going to be a goaltender that is going to put the team on his back and just carry them through a playoff run or through a season. Like, but he is. Steady starting goaltenders over the course of years are near impossible to find at any level of hockey. So credit to him for being able to maintain that steadiness over what is not an easy career path as an AHL goaltender with the amount of turnover and all of that. So.
Right. Yeah. Kind of reminds me of Mike McKenna almost for he ended up, I guess, in Texas. But it's still that kind of style of goalie. Just consistent, and that's just where he'll be.
Yep. And I always feel for Mike McKenna too, because I feel like he could have been had a much longer NHL career, but so many times goalies just get pigeonholed of like, nope, that's an AHL guy. Doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if I was impressed in the 4 games I saw. He's an AHL guy. And maybe that's Leon a little bit, but I don't know. I think where he has fallen in the pantheon of AHL goaltenders is roughly where he belongs. And it's good to see him be, in Lehigh Valley for another year. He's going to be a 5th-year starter with the same team. When's the last time that happened in the AHL?
Yeah, definitely a rarity in the developmental league that the AHL has become. To have a starting goaltender for 5 straight seasons. Wow, I didn't know that fact about Alex Lyon. But you want to talk about a guy that you want to root for. There's a University of Denver Pioneers product in Logan O'Connor re-signing with the Colorado Avalanche organization, and you again, we're talking about the bubble and everything. He did get 5 playoff games in with the Avs because of injuries and things like that. He did, get an assist, but what really impressed me about Logan O'Connor is that he's a good skater. He's got great acceleration in his first strides. His positioning is really well too. It's like you're watching the game and you're seeing the puck, make its rounds and cycle and everything. And then boom, Logan O'Connor's right there in front of the net, putting the puck on the net. Again, he didn't get any goals in the bubble, but he really has a knack for, just where he needs to be on the ice. He's got a growing offensive toolkit, great north-south player, high energy. He lacks that higher ended playmaking skills. Like I talked about, he couldn't convert when he was right in good position in front of the net there. And, it's going to take him a little time to get up to speed at the NHL level. He's only had, just minor experience the past 2 seasons, 5 games in 18-19, and then 16 games in 19-20 in the regular season for the Avalanche. But, you look at his stats with the Eagles, 42 points in 64 games in 18-19 and 25 points in 40 games in 19-20, both with the Eagles. He's a solid guy, and barring any lack of signings by the Avalanche, I think he could very well start, with the Avs come 2021, again, barring any, COVID nonsense or whatever, but always have to put that, little disclaimer on it. But like Scott McDonald and I talked about on the Tape to Tape podcast that we do, it wouldn't be a surprise to either of us if he stays put with the Colorado Avalanche as a good third line player, maybe even replaces a guy like Matt Nieto.
Yeah, I could certainly see that. Especially, go ahead, John.
No, I was gonna say I was gonna say the same thing. I could, like, at first I was thinking, like, I don't know if he makes that team out of camp, and then you said he could replace Matt Nieto, and I'm like, actually, no, I could see that. But that's the thing with a lot of those fourth line, 13th forward, 14th forward kind of guys, is a lot of it doesn't seem to come down to is one player better than the other, but does this player fit into what I need them to do more? And I'm not sure that I put O'Connor as someone who fits what I think Bednar is trying to do with that fourth line, but he could. I definitely think he could be an NHL player. It's just I think some of the spots that he would get put into don't necessarily go with the skills that I think he has. And that's not on Jared Bednar and you using him improperly. I'm not going to accuse him of that in this instance. More of just I think that he is probably going to be in the Eagles side of that locker room in Colorado for the start. But I could envision a world in which Matt Nieto gets the bump for him. So all are possible.
Sean, let's talk about another Hershey Bears signing. We're talking about Brian Pinho.
Yep.
He got a 2-year deal with Hershey. So let's chat about him a little bit.
I will say he took a big step forward this year. I remember at the end of last year being very unimpressed by him. His skating has never wowed anyone, but he took steps forward this year. It's still not an NHL level of skating, but he's improving. And that's, I think, the best you can say about anything is, especially with so many people seem to think that skating is just like, oh, you're either a good skater or you're a bad skater, and that's it. You're stuck there. His skating has definitely improved, but he's got a good release. He wins battles in front of the net and gets pucks, gets his stick on rebounds, which is a skill that a lot of teams, I think, don't think about. They're just like, oh, put the big guy in front. Of course he'll whack in the rebound. But Pinho does a very good job of winning those battles in front, boxing out, getting his stick on rebounds, and putting pucks in. He's not an offensive play driver in the sense that he's not leading that transition into the zone. But that's okay. Like, you don't have to be a do-it-all player at the AHL level to get NHL call-ups. I would like to see him make some more moves, like being able to carry that a little bit more, because while you don't have to have those skills to make the NHL, it sure doesn't hurt. But I definitely am glad to see him come back to Hershey. He seems like a player that fits what Hershey is trying to do and fits that culture in that locker room very well, at least from what I hear on the outside. But if he can continue taking steps forward, there could be a big season coming for him that puts him in, first line forward AHL conversation, as well as, occasional rotations into Washington.
Yeah. And with, when you go into, the Capitals scrimmage that they did and, in the bubble there, and you score a goal during that, I think that makes, obviously it's a scrimmage. It's not, the end all be all for scouting reports or whatever, but I think it definitely makes a big impact when you can, get on the score sheet when you're facing off against, a guy like, maybe an Alexander Ovechkin in regards to, well, maybe not facing off, but you know what I mean? Yeah. So, but anyway, let's talk about, we're going down the list here with signings and everything. We've got Aiden Hill. The Arizona Coyotes re-signed him on September 15th to a 1-year, one-way NHL contract. It wouldn't surprise me if they bumped him to waivers, if they wanted to assign him to the AHL. Obviously that's a thing that happens. So, Yeah, Aiden Hill. I mean, back in the Coyotes organization, I think it's a pretty solid re-signing.
Absolutely. I will admit that I have not gotten to see a lot of tape on him over the past little bit. I don't have infinite time to watch film on every single player we talk about. I do rely on scouting reports for players I haven't seen with my own eyes as much from people I trust. But I haven't gotten to get a lot of info on him. But from the notes I do have, from the little bit I've watched of him, he doesn't really stand out to me for anything in the fact that he is very large. He is a very, very large goaltender. But everything else is just like he moves well, but not exceptionally so. He reads the puck well, but not exceptionally so. He's fine. He's a big, fine goaltender. I'm also surprised that I saw the one-way on the deal too, just because I think of Ronta and Kemper both coming back next season for the Coyotes, and I can't imagine they carry 3 goalies. So that was a surprise move for me to see that he got a 1-year deal, but maybe their new GM has plans that we don't know about yet. So that has remained to be seen. But I think he's someone too who, I mean, his ceiling is probably a reasonable journeyman NHL backup. I don't see him being that 1A, 1B starter. But like I said, I haven't got a lot to see on him, so I don't want to, start making wild hot take things here for a player I don't feel comfortable in saying more than just he seemed fine in the little bit I watched.
Right. And I mean, you look at his stat line, 15-5-0, .918 save percentage, closing in on .92. But I mean, yeah, it's just he's a solid goaltender at the AHL level, and you really can't see him unless barring injury. I mean, maybe that's why I don't know. I saw it was a one-way deal too, and I'm like, well, I mean, what would be the purpose behind that? But yeah, I guess that's up to the that's up to the Arizona Coyotes organization. But staying within the Pacific Division of the AHL, let's talk a little bit about Adam Cracknell. And he is 35 years old. And boy, if you go on his hockeydb.com page, it requires a little bit of scrolling. I mean, when you got a guy that played with the Omaha Axar Ben Knights back in 05-06, I mean, good golly, Miss Molly, and Las Vegas Wranglers of the ECHL. That's a little throwback to my, Mountain Division days there in the ECHL. I mean, yeah. I mean, Peoria Rivermen when they're in the AHL. Yeah, it takes a little bit of scrolling to get down to the current day when you're going on Hockey DB. But hey, Bakersfield, they're bringing back, after spending a year in the KHL with Kunlun Red Star, he's coming back, and he's a veteran presence for this Bakersfield Condors team. If he's still got something in the tank, there's no reason not to take him if he's still good and of good offensive production and everything. He's not a dynamic player by any means, but I think he has enough sense, and he's got a good enough shot release to still put goals in net. During his last season in the AHL, let's see, it was 18-19. He played 32 games, 15 goals, 13 assists for 28 points, averaging about a point per game. So, and that was a couple of years ago when he was 33. So if he can still even muster, I'd say, 75, 80% of that production, I think he's a solid, pickup, solid veteran presence to return to California there. And his warm-up suit collection, gosh, I mean, with all those teams and everything, it must be legendary for sure. So, yeah. But let's shift back. We'll go east again. We'll go to the Central Division, and we'll talk a little bit about Mr. Mike Mccarron over there for the Milwaukee Admirals. And
Mike Mccarron, I thought was a very interesting signing, especially given the way that some of the contracts for Milwaukee could have shaked out. But Mccarron is very much a crash the net style player. He is doing great work in front of the net on the power play, creates tips, slamming home rebounds. He's a good depth center for them, but his skating is, well, no one is ever going to be like Mike Mccarron, A+ skater. He's and like this definitely hurts him in some of his game in ways you wouldn't think a net front presence guy would. I mean, he's great at getting pucks out of the defensive zone with possession and not just throwing it off the glass and out. But the problem is once he gets into the neutral zone, that lack of dynamic speed really catches up with him, and he basically is just dump and chase guy after there, which you don't see a lot of guys who have that many possession exits of their defensive zone to then turn them into dump and chases. Like that's almost always a zone entry for them. And that's something that I think hinders his ability to be a more, top six forward in the AHL. But his decision making too regarding physical play, like I don't want to say he got thrown out of Laval because he made bad decisions when it was time to fight or to making late hits or stuff like that. But it was definitely one of the big knocks against him leaving Laval. And while that has not completely vanished from his game, it's definitely been toned down a lot in Milwaukee, which is good. And I think he's a very good fit for their middle six and what they're looking to do at center.
Mm-hmm. You want to talk about another good depth signing that we're staying in the Central Division. We're talking about the Rockford Ice Hogs, but bringing back Cody Franzen after spending 2 years with, in the KHL with Omsk Avantgarde. He comes back to Rockford, and I think he still has enough left in the tank to be a top contributor. He's that top level AHL defender. He has that, he has enough left to be a top contributor for the Ice Hogs. Definitely brings a professional attitude and leadership into a room. You're talking about a guy who spent the majority of his career with the NHL, or in the NHL rather. And so to be the top tier level defenseman at the AHL level, he's certainly lost what made him that solid NHLer in the early 2010s, but I think he's got enough hockey sense to still be a top AHLer, like I keep repeating. He's a top line defender at the AHL level. So Cody Franzen back in Rockford. Last time he played there was 17-18. And he'll still be able to produce, again, another veteran presence, another good signing on the veteran level for what we're talking about. What about Jake Evans? I can't read. Jake Evans, rather, in Laval. The L in Laval threw me off. Jake Evans in Laval. Sean.
For me, Evans was the, when they needed someone to do absolutely anything for the Laval Rocket last year, it was Jake Evans. Kill penalties, check. Man the power play, check. Eat up big minutes and play defensively in your own zone well, check. Score big goals for us 5v5, check. Like, Jake Evans did everything in Laval last year. And that's something that you don't find players like that. There were a lot of questions when he came out of Notre Dame of would that level of offensive production be something that he was able to maintain at the AHL pace? Would the speed of the game be too much for him? And the answers are yes and no. He can maintain that, and no, he did not look lost, processing information at a higher pace. Like that's something that I think is a big credit to him, and I could see yet again another young kid that could take a big step forward. I don't think when he got taken by Montreal that they were really expecting for him to ever blossom into an NHL player. Everyone hopes, but I don't think that they had big plans for him in the NHL, whereas another good season in Laval, and he might be knocking on the door. I don't think that that's out of the question, and especially given that he very much embodies the mindset of a lot of Montreal's forwards of we're going to do it all. They have a lot of guys too, and especially seem to be shopping some of those guys at the NHL level. There might be space for him in Montreal, but for right now, I think Laval is very happy to have him, and their fans should be happy to have a hockey player that is literally the Swiss Army knife of that team.
Last but not least, most recently, September 24th, just a few days ago, you got a guy that's coming over from Russia. Oh, well, he's not coming over from Russia, rather, but it was debated whether he was going to, go back to his home country or what he was going to do with COVID and everything. But Yakov Trenin signing with the Nashville Predators organization and could very well end up with the Milwaukee Admirals coming up next season.
Yeah, I thought for sure he was going to the KHL. That seemed to be everyone was put. His agent was not wanting to get a 2-year deal done. It was incredibly public that was their position, that he was just going to go back to the homeland to play with his comrades. And here we are. He's very likely, I think, in my opinion, going to be in Milwaukee, just because I think he's not quite. He'll probably get some spot duty in Nashville for sure, which I think he definitely has earned. But he's a big, skilled, full of energy kind of player. He definitely left some to be desired in terms of his ability to drive to the net off the rush. I'd like to see his defensive game round out back to form. That was something in juniors that you saw from him a lot that just really has not been there at the AHL level, and that's been kind of disappointing to me. I'd like to see him be as responsible as he used to be. You don't usually see guys walk those kind of, hockey senses back, or that drive to do the right thing in your own end. But his skating too, skating is always going to be something I come to at the NHL, AHL transition level, because the NHL has gotten so much faster, and so many guys can just skate so much better than their AHL counterparts that, like, yeah, you might be great you might have an NHL shot at the AHL level, like Martin Ferk does, but if you can't move, that's a huge thing against you. But his skating is improving, but still an area of concern. I will give him a lot of credit, though. Not too many guys have the stones to drop the gloves with Zdeno Chara, and not only live to tell about it. He basically dropped Zdeno Chara. Like, he wobbled Zdeno Chara with an overhand. Like, you got stones, kid. I will give you a lot of credit for that.
Seriously, like, what's in the water over there in Russia to where you're gonna, engage in fisticuffs with Mr. Zdeno Chara? I don't care how old he is. He's gonna still put up a hell of a fight for sure. So
Chara's in amazing shape. Like, there are absolute legends of Zdeno Chara's physical fitness routine.
Oh, geez. Yeah. I mean, you see little clips and snippets about that on social media every offseason. It's just like, okay, what did he do? Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, Joseph, thanks for hanging with us through the player signing and everything like that. I am glad you could chime in on a few of those. That's great that, we could plow through those in order to get to this other. Well, we're getting towards the end. Yeah. And we're talking about Roy Sommer coming back as the Barracuda head coach. And Sean, I did not know that he was this long a tenured. I knew he'd been with been the San Jose Sharks AHL head coach for a long time, but 1998?
1998.
Wowie.
Do you remember before MySpace? That's how long ago.
I think we were using AOL and Prodigy for dial-up back in 1998. That's what's going on.
That was when Roy Sommer was, first getting his start in the AHL, when the internet was still this wacky new thing that the kids were doing. Like you just don't see that, where a guy gets to hold an AHL job for the same organization for that long. And I mean, especially too, how many San Jose head coaches in the NHL have been fired that they've been, doing coaching searches for? And I don't even remember hearing him be up for any of those. And that's the most surprising thing. It's not that the organization has kept him, but that he has kept them.
Right. Well, speaking of Chara, I think Chara was drafted in '98.
By the New York Islanders?
I believe so.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You want to talk about staying power? You got Zdeno Chara and Roy Sommer. But you look back at some of the AHL affiliates of the San Jose Sharks. Kentucky Thoroughblades, anyone? I mean, 3 seasons with them. Cleveland Barons for a number of years. The Worcester Sharks, back when Worcester was an AHL market before the great, exodus out west. And then, he's been the San Jose Barracuda head coach for the past 5 seasons. And he hasn't had like superb playoff success. It's kind of intermittent. Like, he's 50-50, either being out of the playoffs or getting bounced in round 1 or 2. He's got a few in there that where he moves on to round 3, but it's like, with all the shakeup, with Rocky Thompson, for example, from, previous head coach from the Chicago Wolves, joining the San Jose, assistant coaching staff. I mean, why not give Roy Sommer a chance to move up to the assistant coaching position and have Rocky Thompson coach your AHL club?
It's funny because when you hear interviews with him and you hear him talk, like, I don't think he's interested in that, which is like I said, that's what makes it the strangest thing. It seems like when you hear like interviews about, when he got sent back to the Barracuda, he wanted to get back to doing what he does best, developing players. And at the NHL level, yes, you still do that, but it's less of the focus. And that's where he feels that he's at his best, is developing young players. And to his credit, a lot of the Sharks prospects are, current players and longtime tenured guys came through his hands. So it's definitely a credit to him that is definitely what he does best. But I'm just surprised that it doesn't seem like he has the interest in moving up to the NHL. And maybe it's for that reason. I'm the best at this. Why leave something you're the best at?
Well, and it's interesting. He was an NHL assistant with the Sharks back in the mid 90s, 96, 97 and 97, 98. He was an assistant. So maybe, he got a taste of that and he's like, not my cup of tea. And I mean, you want to talk about zeitgeist of the 90s? Here's another little tidbit from Roy Sommer. He was a head coach for the San Jose Rhinos of Roller Hockey International. So you're talking a roller hockey head coach too. But before that, he was in the ECHL. He was an ECHL head coach for 5 seasons with the Roanoke Valley Rebels, 91-92, and then 4 seasons with the Richmond Renegades. He is a ECHL championship head coach, 94-95 with the Richmond Renegades. So you want to talk about long-term, well, maybe not long-term. He moved up shortly after that little stint with the Roller Hockey International and ECHL, back when ECHL actually stood for East Coast Hockey League. But yeah, well, hey, if he's going to stay with that organization, I mean, we'll see. The Barracuda were abysmal this past year. They were in the basement. They were just doing awful. So I guess if he's going to stay with the club and continue to develop players for the Sharks, okay, more power to him, more power to the Sharks organization for keeping him around. But
I mean, he's basically the godfather of their developmental pipeline, which brings us to this week's quiz.
Joseph, you ready for the quiz, my friend?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So this week's quiz is called Gangster or Goat.
Gangster
and I'm going to give
or goat.
I'm
Okay.
going to give you a name, and you're going to tell me, is that person A mobster, or B, an AHL Hall of Famer?
Okay.
Because in going through the AHL Hall of Fame, I was like, wow, there are some very mobsterish names here. And then looking at some mobsters, I'm like, there are some hockey names here. So I think this is fun. Joseph, you are the guest on the show. I have 11 questions here, so it will be the first 2 6. Would you like to kick or receive?
I guess I'll kick.
CC Hawkley. Goat or Gangster? George Bugs Moran.
Oh, I think that's goat.
George Bugs Moran was an American Chicago Prohibition-era gangster. He ran the North Side gang in the Prohibition-era Chicago and competed with Al Capone in the 20s or 30s. He was a gangster.
This is throwing me for a loop. I don't like this already off the bat.
All right. Joseph Wills.
Yep.
Fred Bun Cook.
It almost sounds too easy to be a goat, but I'll say goat.
Fred Bun Cook was the head coach of the AHL Providence Reds, leading the team to the Calder Cup championship in his first season. 2 years later, the Reds won another Calder Cup, and in 1942, he coached the Eastern Division team in the first AHL All-Star Game, a benefit to raise funds for Canadian and American efforts in World War II. He is a GOAT.
Nice.
Wow. Yeah.
1-0, Mr. Wills. All right, CC Hawkley. McGregor Kilpatrick.
I'm gonna McGregor Kilpatrick. Hopefully redeem myself on this one. I'm gonna say goat.
McGregor Kilpatrick was affiliated with the AHL for 27 years as the franchise owner of the New Haven Nighthawks and later AHL vice president and general counsel. To honor Kilpatrick's commitment and dedication to the AHL, the Board of Governors created the McGregor Kilpatrick Trophy in the summer of 1997, annually awarded to the team that finishes the regular season with the best overall record. He's a GOAT. CC is on the board.
Familiar. I'm on the board. One for one. All right. Let's see what you got, Joseph.
Joseph, you're going with Zelio Tapazzini.
You know what? I'll say goat.
Zelio Tapazzini is considered by most to be the greatest player in the long history of professional hockey in Rhode Island. Zelio Tapazzini was a prolific offensive talent over 15 American Hockey League seasons, scoring 786 points. He was inducted into the AHL Hall of Fame in 2012. He is a GOAT. 2-1.
Wow. There you go. Okay.
CC. Johnny Leone.
That, my friend, is a gangster.
a.k.a. Johnny Three Fingers, was a member of the Pittsburgh crime family who controlled the gambling operations of the town. He was a major player in the Pittsburgh connection featured in the movie Goodfellas.
Ah, molto bene, molto bene. All right, so we're tied up, but Joseph's got the lead on me in regards to just the Browns and everything. So
Yep.
All right, let's do this.
Joseph, your name is Frederick Cassivi.
You know what? I'll say Gangster.
Frederick Cassivi spent most of his 15 professional seasons in the American Hockey League, becoming one of the most successful goaltenders of the modern era. Drafted by the Ottawa Senators in 1994, he had stops in PEI, Syracuse, Worcester, Hershey, and Chicago. He ranks 5th all-time in wins with 232. He is a GOAT. Cece, your chance to claim the lead here.
Oh, here we go.
James Buddy Mclean.
I'm going to say GOAT.
James Buddy Mclean was an Irish-American mobster boss who was originally the boss of the Somerville, Massachusetts-based Winter Hill Gang during the 1960s. He dominated the local underworld in northern Boston, which including running numbers, loan sharking, and truck hijackings. He is a gangster.
It's not just the stereotypical Italian names that
I went widespread here.
Gosh, you are, yeah, here we are. You're just throwing us for all these loops. That's this is what you like. You take pleasure in this. You take pleasure in watching it. See, look at it. Excellent, Smithers. Yes.
All right. Joseph, Anthony Savella.
I'll say GOAT.
Anthony Savella, a.k.a. Tony Ripe, was the head of the Kansas City crime family from 1995 through 2006. He was in charge of running the organization's gambling interests, which included the Tropicana, Fremont, and Stardust casinos in Las Vegas. He is a gangster.
Wow, a recent gangster, too.
Oh, yeah. So it's just shocking how many, we think of gangsters and crime families as being like a thing at the no.
Yeah. Wow.
All right.
We both still have 2, correct?
We both tied at 2 still.
Jeez, wow.
Your chance to claim the lead here. Don Biggs.
GOAT.
Don Biggs is one of the dominant AHL scorers of the late 1980s and early 1990s. Biggs, listed at 5'8", broke pro rankings with the Springfield Indians at the end of the 84-85 season. Despite skating in just 597 games and 8 full seasons, he is tied for 24th on the league's all-time scoring list with 692 career points. Wow. Inducted into the AHL Hall of Fame in 2018, he is a GOAT.
There we go.
Takes the lead. Your chance to tie it back up here. Glenn Murkowski.
I'll say GOAT.
Glenn Murkowski was a consistent scorer throughout his 10 AHL seasons, was one of the league's leading point getters during the 1980s, and was inducted into the AHL Hall of Fame in 2018. He is a GOAT. We are tied.
3-3. Here we go. How many of these questions do you have? Just curious.
11.
So how many do you have left?
I believe I have only one left, unless I missed one here. No. We're at 11, so I'm going to have to quickly scramble to come up with a tiebreaker here unless
Let's do this. How about this? So last question, both Joseph and I answer what we think it is, and we'll go from there.
That works. Toss-up style.
Toss-up style, exactly.
All right. Vincent Badalamante.
I'll say GOAT.
And just to heighten the drama and a little bit of anxiety, I'm going to say gangster.
Vincent Badalamante, a.k.a. Vinny TV, was the acting boss of the Bonanno crime family from 2010 to 2012. He was released from prison in May of 2013 after pleading guilty to a nonviolent collection of an unlawful debt. He's a gangster. CC manages to score the upset.
Honestly, Joseph, I was gonna say GOAT, but I just wanted to be the contrarian, like I said, to heighten the drama.
So, all right.
Yeah.
That was a good game. Good game.
That was a good game. Good game.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed making that quiz. That was a lot of fun for me to make, and I definitely picked Vincent Badalamante at the end, so I'd say he was Vinny TV.
Vinny TV. Love it. Love it. My goodness. Some of those nicknames, I tell you. I mean, you look at some of the awards in the AHL too, you're like, are these gangsters or are these goats? Oh, it's AHL awards. Of course they're goats. So
I mean, just because we don't know they weren't also gangsters.
no comment on that. But well, man, I love Sean's quizzes. Joseph, I'm really glad that you were the first guy to come onto the show and partake in these funny little quizzes. I mean, Sean puts a hell of a lot of work into these quizzes. He does a bunch of research. He's a really creative dude, and I love it. And I love the fact that you got me on the hot seat for a little bit here. I was sweating bullets, as it were, in my hoodie here. But man, yeah, and that was a good football analogy as we're recording this on Sunday, week 3 of the NFL, from Sean for a kick or receive to Joseph to start the choice there. But
yep.
Anyway, hey guys, we made it to the end of the show. So Joseph, again, thank you for coming on the show. Joseph Wills, our AHL Charlotte Checkers correspondent here for the sinbin.net. Where can people find your work? What's your Twitter handle? And do you have any articles that you're working on currently, Joseph?
All right. Unfortunately, no articles at the moment. Lots of stuff going around though, so we'll see what comes out of that. But yeah, I'm at Sinbin Checkers on Twitter. And then, of course, the Sinbin app website. I'm kind of sprinkled in there. Being here a few months, I got a few articles out there.
Yeah, and like I was saying when I was introducing you, they're fantastic reads. They're very intriguing. You don't have to be a Charlotte Checkers fan. You're welcome, bud. You don't have to be a Charlotte fan to enjoy Joseph's work. Like I said, he's got a very business-minded mindset, which is a lot. I think a lot of people don't realize how much goes into that in regards to, of course, any sporting league. There's obviously the business side to it. So for a lay person, it could definitely open your eyes. So definitely go check out Joseph's work on the sinbin.net. And that's it for the show. Like I'm saying, my name is CC Hawkley. Speaking of Twitter, you can find me at Sinbin Eagles. The other podcasts I do, like I mentioned earlier, is called the Colorado Eagles Tape to Tape podcast, obviously focused on the AHL's Colorado Eagles. My co-host Scott McDonald and I do that every other week. My Colorado Eagles writing can be found at the sinbin.net. I also do a lot of AHL-centric work. Like I said, my most recent article about the Palm Springs Arena is up on there. And I should probably get to work on another Colorado Eagles article here shortly. I feel like I've been focusing more on the AHL and not on the Colorado Eagles in my hockey writing. So stay tuned for that. I'll figure out something intriguing that the Eagles fan base will enjoy. So, Sean?
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien 81. That's SeanObrien 81. I'm also at Instagram at Sean O'Brien _81. You can find my stats work on Tableau. That's bit.ly/SO81-Tableau, TABLEAU. If you guys are enjoying the show, please make sure to subscribe so that you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, please rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening to it from. Doing so helps others find the show, as well as your reviews help us improve it. You can also follow the In the Corners podcast on Twitter at In the Corners Pod. It's also down here in the little scrolling bar on YouTube. As well, you follow those things, you can see what's going on with the show. You can ask us questions, and we'll give you some shout outs on the show if you ask us a good question and answer it as well.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, definitely. Don't be shy to throw us some questions. We're all about fielding questions and gauging the public opinion on things. But hey, if you like us even more than that, please consider leaving a tip in our digital tip jar at patreon.com/thesinbinhockey. Once again, that's patreon.com/thesinbin.hockey. Your support means a lot to us and allows us to continue to provide coverage of minor league hockey, as well as expand our coverage into more markets. I think we are now officially over half of the teams in the AHL we now have a correspondent for, which we've had tremendous growth. Joseph, you've been a part of that. I thank you for that, brother. And we've had tremendous growth with our AHL team, and we want to keep doing it. We want to keep providing, great coverage for the AHL, the ECHL, and the SPHL, all of minor league hockey here in North America. So please, donate and support us through following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. Be sure to check out the other Sin Bins podcast, Hockey Talk, the 3 Periods podcast, our ECHL centric one there, Syracuse Speaks with Alexander Ackerman, and of course, like I mentioned, the Tape to Tape podcast for the Colorado Eagles. So, hey, until next time, thanks for listening and keep your stick on the ice.
Thanks for listening to the In the Corners podcast. Stay caught up with the latest minor league hockey news by downloading the Sin Bin app for Android and Apple devices.
All sports fans have experienced this, right? Something amazing happens on the ice and you think, man, I wish I'd have been filming. Now with the Sporfy app, you can replace that thought with a click. With just one click of a button, Sporfy captures the past 15 seconds of action so you can instantly replay and share your favorite moments all without having to film. And it's easy too. All you have to do is download the app on iOS or Android devices and experience an all-new way of filming sports highlights.